everybody, again with another Friday Live. Happy Aloha Friday. And Adrian, who do we have with us today?
So our guest is Jeff Short. I'm just going to give a quick little intro and background on Jeff. So he graduated from the University of Wyoming with a master's in business administration and lived on the windward side of Kaneohe and now resides in Kailua with his wife of almost 15 years and 3 wonderful kids. He served in funeral service profession for more than 6 years and is currently the sales manager for the Valley of the Temples. Please welcome our guest, Jeff Short. Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank
Jeff.
you, Celia. Thank you, Adrian, so much for having us.
Yeah. So with these, I think about it when you're on social media or you listen to TV or anything, you just want to, the attention spans of our viewers are very short. And when we find it very effective, is just get to it. So right away, talk about what are y'all doing down there at the Valley of the Temple? Tell us what's going on.
Absolutely. This is one of those conversations a lot of families don't want to think about or talk about, but we recognize that we all have to have the conversation. And so really our role in the community is to help families pre-plan for the future and have a roadmap in place for whenever that time does come. 30, 40, 50 years in advance is the ideal situation so that the family has the peace of mind of knowing when that time does come, there's clear direction provided to the family and no one's going to have to second guess what a loved one would have wanted or if they're doing the right thing. And so our team has made it really simple to guide them through that process.
Talk about
Oh, no, Jeff, now I understand that you guys have some kind of like a pre-planning guide. Let's talk about that and how that can help, people that are considering doing the pre-planning.
What's the pre-planning?
A pre-planning guide is one of the most valuable resources that a family can have to answer all these questions. When someone passes away, there's over 100 questions that have to be answered, usually in a very short amount of time. Of course, it can be expensive if nothing's planned out in advance. And so this pre-planning guide can provide all the answers in advance to whoever has to step in during that difficult time. It might be a son or daughter that hasn't lived on the islands, for decades, and they have to fly back on the worst day of their life and start making decisions on something that they're unfamiliar with that can be expensive and then forever. It's permanent. And so this pre-planning guide, when a family fills it out, absolutely priceless so that they can get exactly what their loved ones would have wanted.
I'm glad that you guys have that because I guarantee Adrian's been in that situation. I know I've been in that situation with my grandfather. It was the typical passing the hat. Who's going to pay for this? Who's going to pay for that? We really didn't know. I guess we knew somewhat what his wishes were because he was predeceased his wife at the time. But I'll tell you, in the moment, I think the pre-planning guide, as human beings, we get very emotional. And let me ask you guys this: when you're in a very emotional state, do you make good decisions?
You've asked the right question. Nope, not at all.
No. So that pre-planning guide, it would take so much pressure, I can imagine, off the loved ones. Talk about, maybe talk about the top 1, 2, or 3 things that are on there. You said there's 100 things on there. Talk about the top 1, 2, or 3 things that might be on there that people should be thinking about.
A lot of families feel that the decision is casket or traditional casket burial or cremation. And that is a decision that has to be made. But there's so many other decisions. And the best way to probably illustrate it is with a story. We had a family recently that lost their dad about 10 years ago, and they laid dad to rest here at Valley of the Temples. But now mom had passed away, but they hadn't made any arrangements for mom. And so the 2 surviving sons and the 2 daughters came into the arrangement room here, and we started making decisions with them, started guiding them through the process. And they all were in agreement. They wanted traditional casket burial for mom, and that at the service, at the viewing, they wanted to have an open casket viewing. So they were all in agreement, which is always a good thing. And we were moving through the process. But then we noticed that the photo that they turned in of mom had glasses. So mom wore glasses. And so it's natural for us to ask, when we have that last viewing, do you want mom to have her glasses on or do you want to have her glasses off? And well, the daughters jumped in right away, and it's an easy decision for them. They said, you know what? Mom has been wearing glasses 40 or 50 years. We can't think of a time that we saw mom without her glasses. So the last chance we get to see mom, we want to remember her as we knew her with her glasses on. So we start writing down that detail, but then the boys jump in and they say, wait, Stop. Every night mom went to bed, she took her glasses off and she put them on the nightstand because she was going to be sleeping. She was going to be at peace. So the last chance we get to see mom, we want her to not have her glasses on so that we can think of her at sleep and at peace. And so those are the challenges that come up when we are in an arrangement and no direction has been provided. And, we're just talking about eyeglasses, but there are times where the decisions within a family, there's disputing within that time and they cannot meet to come to an agreement. And because of that, they can't agree on whether they're doing, like traditional casket burial with glasses on or glasses off. And because of that, the family can be disputes. And that's why that clear direction is so important. That illustrates, hopefully, some of the decisions that have to be made that no one really thinks about in advance. It might be a wedding ring on for the viewing and then off afterwards. It might be a photo. One of the biggest challenges that families struggle with is what they wanted to say on their memorial. Their memorial, that you've heard that phrase, maybe set in stone. That comes from our profession. Families really struggle with what they want it to say because they know it's permanent. They know it's long lasting. They really have one chance to get it right. And if that hasn't been provided in advance, they can really struggle with coming to an agreement on that final epitaph.
Yeah, I know what I want to set on my headstone. I wanted to say, I think he moved, ... I guess.
Okay, we'll take note of that. Now,
And if I
We've got that in the pre-planning guide. We've got a spot for that.
Off. Put the glasses off. I don't need the.
So
ears
you had
on.
mentioned like that the cost for pre-planning versus after the passing can be kind of a big difference. Yeah. Let's talk about that. Like how much of a difference is it before they pass versus after?
It truly could be 4, 5, 10 times the difference. And the reason why is when a family pre-plans, let's say they're in their 40s, they start thinking about this and they pre-plan, they get to lock in the price of something that historically has doubled every 5 to 7 years. We're working with real estate on Oahu that so well. And this ultimately is land that's zoned for cemetery use. It's very rare on the island. And when cemetery inventory is depleted, the remaining inventory goes up in price. And so you might have someone that locks in a price in the 70s that on a property that was $200, where that same property today costs $20,000. And the question I always ask our families is, what's the difference between when they bought it in the 70s and today? Well, there's no different at all. It's really, we mowed the grass thousands of times, but that's about it. It's the same piece of land that it was in the 70s, but they were able to lock in the price at $200 and not have to worry about that. But to get to the real maybe heart of the issue as far as the difference in price, if someone has an at-need situation where decisions have to be made very quickly, it's not only difficult on the family, but it's also difficult on our team, as I hopefully illustrated with that story, because we're oftentimes that mediator in the middle trying to handle disputes within the family. So there's not a discount at that time. They don't get to lock in the price. They're just having to handle the immediate need. But if they were to pre-plan, oftentimes they can get a 15 to 20% discount in advance off of something they know they're going to need anyways. Plus they get to lock in the price. And about 90% of the families we work with choose to make payments. So they can make payments, small monthly payments for up to 5 years. And it can be very affordable, convenient for them. And when the payments are done, they don't have to worry about, this burden down the road that they're passing on to their family.
Hey, real quick, Jeff, talk about that picture that's in your virtual background. What's that?
Yeah, so this is thanks for noticing this. In Valley of the Temples, it's 240 acres. We're celebrating our 60th year anniversary this year. But most families that come to the park never have been to what's behind me, which is called Ocean View Terrace. Ocean View Terrace is at the back of our park. It's right at the foot of the Ko'olaus. It's got a view of Kaneohe Bay. It's really an incredible development. If I get out of the way here, you can kind of notice it's in the shape of the heart. And inside the heart, families love that area. It was designed by a feng shui master, so everything was focused on pointing at or directionally towards Kaneohe Bay, with the backdrop of the Ko'olaus that support you almost like an armchair. And then it has a water feature. I got to scoot over a little bit, but there's a stream that runs right down the middle of the heart. It's the largest man-made water feature on Oahu. We've got red tea leaves that really bring in the element of fire and feng shui, but families love this garden. It's peaceful, it's private, it's beautifully landscaped. They love the sound of the running water. You can hear the bon show, which is a large bell over at the temple when you're up there as well. But we've got some incredible properties. The one you're highlighting there, it's priced at $33 million. And, we really have something for everybody. And that's one of the things we take pride in. We have properties that start around $3,000, and we have properties that go up into the millions of dollars for families that want to build a multi-generational estate. It's completely up to the family. We want them to see every option every time, and then they can make the decision that's best for them.
Yeah.
So Jeff, what is the average cost of the cemetery property and funeral service? Like, we're talking numbers, like this huge range between 3,000 to 33 million. Like, on average, what are you seeing?
Yeah, there can be a huge range. You're right. A lot of it has to do with how many individuals of their family, how many generations they want to keep together. So if they're planning for just one individual, that'll help answer the question. You've got, I'd say the average cemetery property is anywhere from $12,000 to $15,000. Although, again, we've got properties that are a lot less than that and a lot more than that. And then when a family pre-plans that cemetery property, that's really the phase one of pre-planning. The second phase are the items that you'll need to complete that property or use that property. That's the labor. So that's a backhoe, a tractor that opens up the space. Caskets or urns that are placed in the ground are going to be placed in a protective vault as well. So there's an expense in there. The labor and the vault combined are about $3,000 for a casket burial to be placed in the ground. And then a lot of range comes to the memorial. Do they want to choose bronze? Do they want it to be granite? We talk about kind of a blank canvas. If you were telling a story of a life well lived, you'd want the biggest canvas possible. And so we have memorials that cover the entire space. We call them a full ledger. There's a half ledger. And then there's smaller memorials that are at the head of the space. It just depends on the story the families want to tell. That can range anywhere from $4,000 to $40,000. And really, it's meant to last, and it's meant to withstand the test of time. So everything that we make in a cemetery is made out of granite or bronze. So on the cemetery side, you might have an average of around $20,000 to $25,000 for an individual. And then on the mortuary side, and that has to do with the funeral services, the cremation, the celebration of life, caskets, urns. It might be a beautiful DVD memorial tribute, someone that's given a eulogy. All of that has to do on the mortuary side. And that can range anywhere from $4,000 to $6,000 to $15,000. A lot of it depends on the casket or the urn or the type of service that they select.
Yeah, that picture there is of a piano, right? So I'm going to guess that that's where Liberace is buried.
Yeah, exactly right. That's an above ground mausoleum. And a mausoleum is one of the most prestigious forms of burial. It dates all the way back to biblical times. If you're familiar with the Bible, Jesus was laid to rest in a tomb above ground that was pre-planned by Joseph of Arimathea. And so mausoleums go way back. The Taj Mahal, the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, the pyramids in Egypt are all mausoleums. So this picture is a mausoleum where one individual, most likely in a casket, is placed above ground and maybe had a love for music. Or like you said, Liberace, it's a story that you get to tell. And that is all polished granite. And anywhere that polished surface that you see there, any polished surface can be engraved to tell a story. You can do whatever you want around that grand piano. Just some really incredible designs. We can create anything that a family wants out of granite or bronze.
Yeah. I put something on there like, hey, Joey, that hammer I borrowed from you, it's on the first shelf in my garage. But
exactly right.
Talk about, you've mentioned the word cemetery, you mentioned the word mortuary. Go ahead and, one more time, help people understand the difference between the cemetery and the mortuary.
Yeah, one of our roles in the community is education. And a lot of the general public, and I know I can speak for myself starting in this profession about 10 years ago, I did not know the difference between a cemetery and mortuary. And it wasn't even that I didn't know it. I hadn't even thought of it, really. And that's where our general public is oftentimes when they're calling in on the worst day of their life. So a cemetery is the final resting place for a loved one. Here in Hawaii, in the United States, it is permanent entitlement, which means when a family buys a cemetery property, they own the rights to that property forever. So they never have to worry about, in other countries like Japan and Hong Kong and in Germany, you have to pay over and over again. Otherwise, they're going to reuse your property. They don't do that in Hawaii. So cemetery is everything for the final resting place. And then a mortuary is the individuals that go out and bring a loved one into our care. And then they do everything behind the scenes, preparation for casketing, embalming, if that's what a family chooses. And then they have the service in one of our 3 chapels. During that service, you have the eulogy, you have someone that's going to have maybe possibly play music, a DVD memorial tribute, flowers. All that is beautiful. But the last responsibility of a mortuary is to transport the loved one to the cemetery. Valley of the Temples is unique on Oahu. It's one of the only locations that has a cemetery and a mortuary and a crematory all in one location. So when a family chooses to work with us and put their trust in us, they don't ever have to worry about whose care their loved one's going to be under. It's all taking place in one location. The same caring team that they met with in advance is also going to be there when that time does come, start to finish.
Adrian, you had a question?
Oh, I want to talk about the cremation, because we've talked a lot about like the burial. And I know there's a lot of families that choose to cremate. Let's talk about the different options that people have when it comes to that kind of service.
Yeah, you nailed it. Especially being out here in the Pacific, cremation rate is about 70%. So it's about 7 out of 10 families are asking to find out a little bit more about cremation. And what we can share with those families, because some of those families want to maybe scatter at sea. Maybe that's a part of the tradition that they have in their family. Maybe they want to have that urn taken home and be in a loved one's home for a certain amount of time as they are adjusting to the loss. What we show families is that they can do both. They can meet the needs of those that have passed away and also be concerned about those that have survived that loved one and have a place to come and visit on Father's Day, on Memorial Day, on Dad's birthday, during Christmas time. And so what we show families is that they can actually honor Dad's wishes. If his wishes were to be scattered at sea, we can honor that. And we can have half of the cremains scattered at sea in a beautiful ceremony. And we can have the other half of the cremains placed in a cremation garden like you're seeing on the screen. Or it can be placed in a beautiful glass front niche, which is a great way for families to memorialize as well. But talking about the cremation garden, since it's on the screen, a cremation garden is a well-landscaped, beautiful garden for the permanent placement of one urn, and up to, really, there's not a limit, but 8 to 16 urns can be placed in one specific property for multiple generations. And so then the families have that opportunity to come back and pay their respects. They have I would say, a neutral place so that they can come and pay their respects to their loved one versus having to go to, let's say, older brother's house that has Dad's urn at home. And, whatever challenges they may have with just interpersonal relationships within families. Yeah. So this is something that we're open to.
Do you have many people that choose the jewelry option? Do you guys have the jewelry option for your cremation?
We do. Yeah. So cremains can be split and placed in cremation jewelry. I've seen that done for grandkids. We have what are called artful ashes. It's blown glass. They get to pick the shape and the color. And really a small amount of the cremains will be blown into that glass. It is beautiful. It can be sitting on a fireplace mantle while they have the remainder of the cremains placed here at Valley of the Temples. We have a lot of beautiful options. We always encourage families, to come find out about all these details, in person so that we can answer all the questions together at one time and really make the process simple for them to follow.
So you guys, initial consultation, what is it, like $1,000 or something?
That's a good question. It's a free consultation. We really are education to the community. This isn't something that most families want to talk about, like we mentioned in the beginning, but this is a need that they're going to have to face. And this is much easier done in advance, right? We can provide all the answers in advance in the pre-planning guide. We can have it actually paid for the family. So when that time does come, we can get it down to where every decision is made. The clothes are even hanging in the closet. There's a flash drive attached to the pre-planning guide that has all the photos that they want played on their memorial or at their DVD tribute. They have the favorite poem or verse that they want on their memorial. All the family needs to do is pick a time and a date. And then they can spend the time going through that process, that grieving, healing process, as opposed to having to make these difficult decisions.
I know things are kind of backed up with COVID. Is that all caught up now?
It has all been caught up, but that was a very challenging time for our profession and for everyone, of course. But the families that lost a loved one, they could only have 10 people at their service. Yeah. And that was very difficult. So a lot of families delayed having a service. Maybe they kept an urn at home and they delayed it as long as they could because they were hoping that the decree would open up and they could have, general public, as many people as they want. That's now been opened up for about a year. And for a while there was a backlog, but we are able to meet families within 48 hours of the passing of a loved one. And then we're able to have a service on whatever time, meets their needs. A lot of times families in Hawaii are waiting for someone to come from the mainland or overseas. And so they're requesting, from us to do that service 2 to 3 weeks from now. But we have them in our office, within the next 48 hours.
Adrian, any last question to wrap it up? Because we're coming up on the end of our time.
No, I think we really covered a lot. during
Yes.
our time together today. And, thank you so much, Jeff, for being our guest and explaining all the different options and things that people need to know about, the Valley of the Temples and all the services you guys offer.
Yeah, thank you both.
We encourage
Appreciate
our viewers out there, go set up an appointment with Jeff and Chelsea down there. And, if mom or dad or whoever your loved one is hesitant, set up the appointment and bring them with you. I'm sure that they would appreciate that because, it's a reminder of our mortality, but the more family that we can have around with us in that moment of making that decision, the easier it is. And I'm sure you guys are not hard sell, closing people. You're just there to educate, correct?
Exactly right. The last thing a family needs going through these decisions is someone that's going to be pushy. We talk about taking a family by the hand and leading them through this process. They want an expert. They want someone that's well educated on this profession, but they also need someone that's going to provide every option and let the family decide. And that's exactly what we talk about within our team. You mentioned Chelsea. I work very closely with her. She helps families pre-plan for both cremation, cemetery. She's got all the answers that we can assist families with. And so we really appreciate this opportunity to talk about a topic that so many families are talking about inside their home. They just don't know who to talk to, outside of their home.
So save money, save the emotions of your family, go book a pre-planning thing and get it taken care of. It's that beginning of the year. It's when everybody makes these resolutions. It's the perfect time to go squared away.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for being on the show. And I know we'll probably have you on here again because this is something that people need to be reminded of. And so we'll look forward to having you on the show again.
Thank you so much, Antonio. Thank you, Adrian. Privileged to be on.
Have a great weekend.
You too.